If your stress feels out of control, your energy is gone, your sleep's a mess, and your hormones are all over the place, you're not alone. In this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Tanya Paynter, a naturopathic doctor and Christian apologist who's bridging faith and functional medicine to help women heal from the inside out. We're talking about what really happens when cortisol hijacks your hormones in midlife and how inviting God back into your healing can restore the peace your body's been craving. Still trusting a system that profits from your sickness? Faith Over Pharma is here to flip the script and help you heal the way God designed. Do you ever feel like your body is falling apart, but no one can tell you why? You've done all the right things. You've seen the doctors, you've run the labs, maybe even tried supplements, and yet you're still tired all the time, snapping at people you love, barely sleeping, and wondering, is this just how it's going to be now? I hear this all the time, been there myself, and that's exactly why I created the Hormone and Healing Roadmap. In this one-on-one session, we look deeper, past the surface, past the normal labs, and into what your body is really trying to say. I'll show you what your doctor probably didn't tell you, help you understand how stress and hormones are working together or against you, and give you a clear plan to start feeling like yourself again. And because healing isn't just physical, we'll invite God right into the process because peace and balance start with Him. If you're ready for answers, for clarity, and for someone who actually listens, head over to susangladstein.com to book your session. I am so honored today to be joined by Dr. Tanya Paynter, a naturopathic doctor with a master's in Christian apologetics. She's the CEO of Psalm Medical and the founder of Christian Women's Health Fellowship. It's a space where faith and functional medicine come together to heal the whole person, which I absolutely love and has been such a powerful piece of what I've integrated into my own practice. She has such a heart for helping Christian women see how our physical, emotional, and spiritual health are all connected, and how inviting God back to the center of our healing brings the kind of peace and balance that no supplement or protocol could ever. So I am so glad that you're here, and I love how your work bridges faith and functional medicine. And I would love to hear how you got those two worlds, how that all came together for you.
Well, I'm excited to be here, have this conversation with you. So thanks for having me. So that the answer to your question is totally a God thing. Like I had no idea why a naturopathic doctor would ever go get a master's in Christian apologetics because ethically, like doctors aren't supposed to talk to their patients about religion or God. I mean, it's kind of taboo in clinical setting. And so I'm like, God, this makes no sense to me. But it was a very clear God story, and I won't share it now, but it's pretty phenomenal, like how he just made it very clear, like this is the path. And so I ended up doing the apologetics mostly because in 2023 I went through what I call my year of doubt, and for my whole life I've always been a science girl, and so I had questions about God and Jesus and the truth of the Bible and how miracles can work and just some things that if you hear some of the doubts that I had, you're like, you called yourself a Christian? Like they were pretty foundational doubts. And I never got any good answers. And so in 2023, like they hit me hard. And so I struggled. And God was faithful. He held on to me through the whole year, but He did allow me to struggle with that, the doubts, mental doubts, right? The logical doubts. While I always said I held on to Him in my heart, but now that's not correct. Like He held on to my heart, right? So He was holding on to me. He didn't let me go. I could feel that, but I didn't recognize it for what it was at the time. And so He let me struggle. And at the end of that year is where He led me down to saying, hey, you can actually get a master's in this. And I said, well, that's amazing, but I don't really need to go back to school. So can I just do some online apologetics course and learn what it is you want me to learn? And he was very clear, no, no, the what I have for you, you have to have this degree. And I was like, okay. So I did. And through my master's thesis was on how our doubts about God can negatively affect our health and how our faith can positively affect it. And just the more I dig into that topic, the more amazed I am about how he built us and why we're told some of the things that we're told to do in the Bible. It seems like it's, just to bring us closer to God, but it actually has physical repercussions in a good way when we follow the word of God the way that he tells us to. So it's pretty fantastic.
Oh my gosh. I can relate a lot in that I went through something similar in 2019 in the hardest year of my life, really just peeling back all of the layers of doubt and anger. I was angry with the Lord because
Mm,
I thought I was going down one path and he was leading me on a completely
mm,
different one. And I did not want to do what he told me I should be doing and waiting in his perfect time. And it wasn't my time. And it was the hardest year of my life.
mm.
But I also felt the closest to the Lord. And I think that that's what I've loved so much now in going through this process and peeling back the layers and following his plans, and how, yes, that was part of my revelation that like God didn't make a mistake when he created us.
Yep.
And, I had had a adverse reaction to a vaccine
Mm,
that really like took my whole health, put it down the toilet, and I didn't think I
mm.
was ever going to get it back. But it was really, for me, the start of unfolding all of the things that I had been taught, unlearning things, and that realizing God didn't make a mistake.
Yeah.
So I know that spiritual health is often the missing piece I feel in medicine. And I'm curious to hear from you what it looks like to really invite God into the healing process, either practically, personally, or both.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's way more important than we give it credit for, and that comes from my own personal testimony as well. Like I've had fibromyalgia, I've had chronic migraines, like I've had some of my own health struggles that I've gone through, and hormone issues forever, like ever since I was a teenager. And as a naturopathic doctor, like I did all of the things, right? And I got myself to a certain place and I was managing, but I was on a very restricted anti-inflammatory diet and I was taking like 20 supplements a day. And that was keeping me kind of even keel, but I still was sleeping terribly. I was still having terrible, menstruation and a lot of pain and still super restricted on the diet, which in and of itself is just so emotionally draining. And so when during this kind of year, this 2023, it started a little bit before that, but he called me to silence, right? He called me to sit with him. And 2023, 2024 was, things from a business standpoint went downhill. And I realized no matter what I did, no matter how much effort I put into my business, I had the exact same results as if I stepped back and just allowed the stuff that I'd already set up to work. And he was making it very clear, like, I'm not giving you more people because you need time with me. Like, this is time for us to connect in a way that we never have before. And I fought that goad so hard, but it finally clicked for me. And lo and behold, guess what? I don't take anymore. I take 3 supplements a night and I eat whatever I want now, which is still, very healthy because that's what I enjoy that. I like the vegetables and stuff. I don't eat a ton of processed food, but I can have gluten, I can have dairy, I can have potatoes, I can have all the nightshades, like things that I could never eat before. And hormones are amazing. I'm sleeping fantastic like I used to as a kid. And I'm like, I haven't changed anything. If anything, in my opinion, from a naturopathic standpoint, I would have technically gone backwards because I've stopped doing all of those things. And I can't tell you the last time I felt this good with this much energy in my I guess I'm closer to late 40s now, but than I have for since I was a teenager. And I absolutely 100% attribute that to just my stillness with the Lord during that time. And so you ask what it looks like for someone to incorporate that into their lifestyle. And I think that that's a question that each individual person needs to bring to the Lord and lay it at his feet, because he's going to call each of us to do it in a different way that fits that particular individual. And that's, I think, one of the beauty of working from a functional but spiritual standpoint is understanding that God made us uniquely. And medicine is very good at compartmentalizing people into symptom boxes. And when, the remedy for that symptom box doesn't work, it's like, I don't know what to do with you, sorry. But God has a specific remedy for each individual one of us that were tailor-made to us. And so when we invite him in, and we can partner with our doctors as opposed to being told what to do by them, because they're not God and they don't know your body as well as you do. So I always tell my patients, like, this needs to be a partnership and you need to steer the boat. I'm here just as your guide because I know about how the physiology works and the things that can help bring things on board, but you need to be telling me what's going on in your body. And we work together to try to figure things out. And when we bring God into that picture, just like a marriage or a relationship of any kind, like when God is a part of that and we're both praying on it, I can't tell you the number of times where I'm like sitting there listening to somebody talking about their symptoms and I am at a complete loss. I'm like, I have no idea what to do with this person. And my thoughts would turn to God and be like, God, help me figure out what to do with this person because they're in a lot of pain and I don't know how to help them. And then something would pop into my head and I would tell it to that person and they would go do it and they'd come back the next time. They're like, it's gone. Like that totally fixed it. You're amazing. I'm like, that was not me. That was not me. And so I think that especially if you can find a provider, and I just love to encourage people to bring this up. Like your doctor can talk to you about this if you bring it up to them. And just, if they're of the same faith, then fantastic, right? Then you can ask them to pray with you. You can, if you're comfortable. This is a very kind of taboo thing right now. I would love to see that change. But we have to start someplace, right? We have to step out in that boldness. And so talking to your doctor, asking if they would pray with you, if they're comfortable doing that. Not everybody will say yes, and that's okay. You can decide, well, I really like this person and I want to stay with them. Or you can say, you know what, maybe this is my prompt that I need to go find a different provider that's going to fit more of my needs of what I need. And that's okay too. And so, but just sitting with the Lord and just asking him, and I would say 9 times out of 10, initially, what I hear people telling me is that silence, like he is asking for our time. Like he wants us to sit in that silence. And we were talking about that before you pressed record, of just like people don't recognize. And I myself was absolutely the same way. I'm like, I'm not stressed. And then I'd, be at the massage table, or the acupuncture table, and they're like, you are as hard as a rock. Like you absolutely are stressed. And I'm like, I don't feel stressed. And they're like, well, you need to learn to listen to your body more. And I'm like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And so I think that we just kind of get into this pattern of being so used to go, 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 because our society, we're constantly stimulated. We're constantly looking at phones, on TV, on the computer, always have to have noise and sound and things happening, or we get bored. And I think that, and there was a point there where I was like sitting outside on my back deck. I'm like, God, I am so bored right now. And he's like, I'm boring. He's like, sitting with me in silence and talking to me is boring for you. And I was like, whoa, like that's what I heard in my head when I was saying it. And I was like, okay, well, but I feel like I have better things to do. And then I was like, oops, did I just say better things to do than sit with you, God? And he's like, that's your priorities. And he really convicted me to just reevaluate my business, my family, my commitments, what I was putting priority. And he's like, why am I not number one? And I was like, I don't know the answer to that. So I feel like that was a very long, drawn out answer to your question, but I do feel like sitting with him in some silence is a great place to start. If you're like, I don't really know and I don't hear him saying anything, then just put 10, 15 minutes aside in the morning, at night, whenever you can, but make it a thing. Like this happens every day. And I'll tell you, it's harder than it seems. Like 15 minutes shouldn't be that hard to find. If I don't do it first thing in the morning, like it doesn't happen. And I hear him through the day. He's like, I don't have my time with you yet. And I'm like, God, I don't have time for you right now. And he's like, oh, but I beg to differ. And so I do argue with him a lot on that. But, you know, as long as we're trying.
Right. And I can appreciate and relate to that as well because I too went and as we were saying before we hit record, I went through that where I was like I, I didn't know how bad I felt until
Yeah.
I felt good.
Yeah.
Didn't
Yes.
realize how stressed I was
Yes.
until I wasn't. And yes, the biggest key for me was to really trust the times of rest, the
Hmm.
times of quiet, the times of slowing down, because I was used to going a million miles a
Hmm.
minute and giving to everyone else, putting myself last on the to-do list, which is
Hmm.
side note why I'm so passionate about my retreats in Costa Rica that I host every year is like for that woman who's giving to everyone else, feels bad about taking time for herself. Like it is
Hmm.
so, so, so important.
Well, and Susan, if you think about like, what did Jesus do? Like, he would give, give, give. Like, he did nothing but give, except he always took time to go off into the hills and spend time with God. Like, he needed that recharge just as much as we do, right? And so I think it's really important to remember, like, Jesus modeled this for us. And what is it saying when we're not in the mind space that this is that our relationship with God is worth time out of our day? It's not I'm sitting on the couch doing nothing. No, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm talking to my Lord. Like I'm talking to my Father and I'm building this relationship and there's literally nothing on this earth that is more important than that. Even though it feels like everything else is and we've got stuff to do. And so I totally agree with you. Like it's hard to just sit and talk to him.
It truly, truly is. And I love that. And I will say that I see so much in my clients, the stress, the hormonal problems, whether it's, trying to conceive or just, that, you know, early 40s, late 40s, what is going on with my body that I experience. But I'd love it if you'd kind of explain maybe what's happening in our body when we do have chronic stress that's hijacking our hormones. And even maybe someone is listening and they don't know that that's happening to them. Like, how can
Yeah.
they recognize that? And what would they do to get help?
Yeah. Well, I think again, like you hit the nail on the head, when we don't recognize how stressed we are or how ill we feel until we feel better and we realize, oh, this is actually what normal is. Like our God made us in an amazing way that helps us to adapt to whatever it is that we're giving and doing to our body. And so it's not until we actually make that time to step back and start, kind of making those times where we are able to, all right, well, I look forward now to going to church, to doing my prayer time, to sitting in the Bible when I feel my stress level rise, or if it's been 2 days or 3 days since I've actually been in the Word. Like, I can't wait to get back there because I can feel now. It's not so much that I feel the stress, it's that I feel the lack of peace. And that might be easier for someone to resonate with than, like, I don't feel stressed. But if you feel a lack of peace, and once you've felt God's peace, like, there is no high better than that. Like, oh, it's just amazing. And I'd never had that until this forced summer of spending time with God. And he was just filling me with just this unbelievable peace. I mean, that's what it is. And so now when I start to lose that, then it's like brings my head back around to it. And so if we start working on making that a priority and asking God for it. Like if we ask God for that peace that defies understanding, he is faithful in giving it to us, but we have to create that time and space for him to do that. And so when you're asking about our hormones and how stress can kind of hijack how they work, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that when we enter into menopause, our hormones are taken over by our adrenals. So our ovaries stop working and our adrenals are And for someone who might not know what adrenals are, that is the two organs. There's a pair of them. So they are what is responsible for releasing cortisol, but also blood sugar and some salt management and things like that. But mostly they're known for the cortisol release. And so cortisol is a very it's our awake hormone is what I call it. And it helps to give us energy through the day and all of that. But as we go through menopause and we enter into menopause and our ovaries stop producing the hormones that we need in the amount that we need, then the adrenals will kick in and they start taking over. And if we have taxed our adrenals so much during our premenopause time, then there is nothing left postmenopausally for it to give. And so this becomes a major problem in the postmenopausal woman who has a ton of hormone issues because they have no hormones now because their adrenals are so shot that they just can't produce anything. And those are the women that end up with terrible side effects and, have to be on all kinds of different medications and can't quite get the hormones right and, the hot flashes and all of that. And so I like to try to tell especially my women in the 40s, you have time right now. If you work on reining back in on the stress, if you start prioritizing God number one, like he's going to start convicting you when you haven't taken enough downtime, and you start to shift your thinking from, oh, I'm being lazy because I'm sitting here, to, oh, I'm spending time with the Lord on the couch, and that's okay. And then if you can start building that in, you have a decade before you're going to actually go through menopause, and the transition is going to be so much smoother for you. And so when we think about how stress affects it, if we look at the biochemistry of how our hormones are made, they share the same building block as cortisol does, and so, but they're along two different pathways. And so, if our body is constantly demanding cortisol because we're going, 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 so we're in that stressful mode, we're in fight or flight, our cortisol is being released all the time, our stress neurotransmitters are being released all the time, eventually we're going to run out of those building blocks, right? And so then not only do we start seeing our cortisol not being made properly, but then we also start seeing our estrogen and testosterone and progesterone not being made properly. And then we also see our stress neurotransmitters not being made properly, which, in addition to being a reaction for stress, is also neurotransmitters that help keep us alert and feeling ready to go and kind of sharp and lacking in brain fog. So when we start having brain fog, like a lot of times it's these catecholamine neurotransmitters that are not where they need to be because we have used up so much of our building blocks and our body's under so much demand and so much stress that it just keeps building these stress neurotransmitters and stress hormones until it can't build them anymore. And then all of the other things that share those building blocks now don't have enough to go around. And so then we start seeing these imbalances happen. And so it's just really stress. I mean, the enemy does a fantastic job of just keeping us constantly busy, constantly busy. We think we have our priorities straight because I'm doing good stuff, right? I'm volunteering at the church and I'm going with my family and I'm doing all these things and I'm running errands and I'm cleaning. And plus I also have work and stuff that I'm doing. And so if he can't get you any other way, then he's just going to wear you down and wear you out until you're wherever, right? You're chronically ill and now you can't care for anybody. You're angry at God because why is he allowing this to happen to you? And really it was the enemy that made you think like you have to do all these things at all this time and just kept piling on, piling on, piling on. And so I like to have the conversation with people, what are your major responsibilities? And they'll list it out. And then I'll say, okay, what can you get rid of? And they're always like, nothing. And it's like, well, wait a minute. So you have this job that demands, 60 hours a week. What does that look like? Well, I can't quit my job. I was like, can't you? Like, what other jobs would benefit from your experience? And they're like, well, I mean, I've been at this job for 20 years. I'm like, that's fine. I'm not telling you you have to quit your job, but I'm telling you it is possible, but you have to be willing to look at it through that lens. And I'm thinking of one person in particular, and she had been a teacher that it was a very high demand teacher job, and it was all year round. She didn't really get a summer break. And she had been at it for like 20 years. And she came back to me 3 months later and she's like, you're right. Like, I can't do this job anymore. This job, I've taken on so much more than just this teaching job. I didn't realize over the years that they're just relying on me to do all this stuff. And it's actually, I'm doing the job of three people. I can't do this anymore. And so she ended up quitting and going to a different job that would take advantage of her skill set. And she came back another 3 months after she had started. And she's like, I'm a different person. I'm sleeping. My hair is not, I'm not losing hair anymore. And she just was so like, her energy was just way down, right? She wasn't in stress mode all the time. She was in a calm place and she was happy. And she's like, thank you so much for making me look at my priorities in life because I thought that I couldn't quit my job, but that's just because I was comfortable there and it's what I'd been doing for 20 years. And so I think if we just kind of reevaluate the things in our life and how much power we give them over us, we can find ways that we can rearrange um, things and still get things done. And so I spend at least an hour a day now in Bible, in prayer. I shouldn't say every day. It doesn't happen every day. I try to make it happen every day. But during the work week, usually, like I make a point of doing an hour a day. And when I don't have that, my day never goes as smoothly. And I feel very frazzled by the end of it. And I've noticed this pattern. And so now I can't wait to get home. Like I drop my kids off at the bus, and then that's my Bible time for the next hour to hour and a half. And I used to be the girl that was like, okay, it's been 10 minutes. Like, God, I gotta go like I've got stuff to do. And so and now it's an hour and a half. And I just like those things will wait. Like I don't have to answer that email right the second that it came in. Like I can wait an hour and a half because this is my God time. And that took me years to wrap my brain around, you know. And sometimes we fall back into that trap of, oh, no, this email came in. Oh, this seems really urgent. I should probably take care of this right now. And then I'll get sidetracked. And then something, Facebook Messenger, something will pop up like, oh, I should answer them real quick. And then suddenly it's 12:30 and it's lunchtime and I haven't had any Bible time and I feel frazzled and I'm just like, what happened? And I didn't even get anything done. It was like I was running after rabbits all day. And I'm like, oh, well, the enemy won that day, you know? So, yeah, it still happens all the time. But then you just, you know, the good thing is like he's good in convicting you about that. And the Holy Spirit will kind of get you back on track. And then you wait until the next time you do it.
It's such a good, just a good message and something that I personally went through. I was in a very high stress, working crazy long hours, much to the detriment of my family. And I had long, as a life coach, health coach, had told people that, like, I don't know of anybody that gets to their deathbed and says, shoot, I wish I would have worked harder.
Yeah.
And here I was pouring everything into work. And the Lord was like, you got to quit your job. You got to retire from the military. You got to quit your job. You got to, you know, go home and become a fertility coach. And I was like, what? I
What?
don't, I don't know about any of this. Like it was so far outside of
Mm,
my comfort zone and what I had planned. And it was scary. It was scary to leave a
hmm
career I had done for 23 years and retire and pick up homeschooling. And
mm,
then the Lord blessed me with another baby. And it was like, what? Like, I don't know about all of this and what you have planned. And I can say that now, a year and a couple of months of doing this, like, thank you, Lord, for
mm.
always
Yes.
knowing what's better
Yep.
for me than I do. But it's scary. And a lot of
Mm,
times, the things that we need to do are probably the most scary and most uncomfortable.
mm-hmm.
But also, that's when, I've grown the most and seen the most blessings.
Yep.
And it was all in just getting quiet and, you know, being faithful in those things. And I'm curious because I know you did a whole thesis on how our spiritual health impacts our physical health. And I know for me, stress always manifested itself in illness for me.
Mm,
It's like
mm-hmm.
the time that you can't afford to get sick is the time that I would
Get sick.
always get sick.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which I haven't in years, thankfully, but how do prayer, worship, spiritual rest physiologically shift
Mm,
our nervous system and our hormone balance? Because I think that that's like a message I really, really want to get out there to women who are so used to giving to everybody else that don't think that they have time to take care of themselves or
yeah.
to be quiet with the Lord and just I found personally that when I trusted the Lord with my time and taking rest, I actually was more productive
Yep.
than the times where I just, like full throttle. And I guess like the same can be with, tithing. If you trust him with the
Yeah.
90%, it can go a lot further than your 100%. But anyways, I would love for you to kind of talk about some of those aha moments that you learned in your study of that.
Yeah. This is fascinating. So every practice that God tells us, right? Forgiveness, prayer, worship, community, breaking bread together, like all of it, there's a lot of research now about how our religious practices and rituals and our doubts and our religious struggles have impacted. There's not a whole lot on how it affects physical health per se, so much as mental health, but we know how our mental health now is directly linked into our physical body, and so we can make a lot of these kind of these jumps and understand some of the effects that are happening. And there's actually a Dr. Harold Koenig who has done a ton of research on actually like how the physical effects of our religion and our faith can positively impact our body. And so, there's a reduction in cardiovascular disease. There is a boost in immunity. So our immune system is suppressed. And you see that more pronounced in non-religious people than in people that go to church once a week. And then you see a moderate effect in people that go to church irregularly. So there's still a little bit of benefit, but the most benefit was seen when you're going to church regularly, when you're involved in actively pursuing a relationship with God, right? And so, same thing with prayer. We see changes in the brain and how it lights up and how it's functioning. We see changes in some of the biochemistry of our body, how our hormones are, the oxytocin that is released. So that's our love hormone. It's so interesting that when we eat in community, oxytocin is released and we bond with the people that we're eating with. And so when God's telling us like we're meant to break bread together and eat together, like it's not just for company or for, emotional support, although of course it does that. It actually bonds us to the people that we're eating with, that we're sharing a meal with. And he made us physically to respond in that way. And I just think that's so amazing. And so like the more that I'm looking into, and so this is the kind of stuff that I cover in my podcast, The Christian Clinician. I talk about how these biblical practices affects our physical health and ways that we can kind of like different ways of looking at the call to prayer, like that we should be talking to God, right? Okay, so we know that we should be doing that and that spiritually this is something that we're called to, but when we know, and maybe this is me, maybe this is my perspective, but when I know that it's going to have a physical benefit and I'm going to physically feel better, like it's more of a driver for me, which maybe is shameful to admit. Like God should be enough for me, but I'm a selfish creature and I want to feel good too. And so, for me, learning how these practices that God has outlined in the Bible, and I've got like 300 that I've been kind of looking at. And so I'm going to methodically go through all of them. My last episode was on fellowship and how the research that we have around how people who are socially isolated, their mental health and their anxiety, stress, and depression are much higher than people who are not socially isolated. And then there's also research that says that people who are within a religious community have even better results than people who are just in a secular community. And so, no matter what it is that I've looked at so far, secular was always better than none of whatever it was, right? Meditation or fellowship or whatever. But religious was always better than secular. And so we see this time and again. So it's not only he created us all to be, in amongst each other, but then God calls his family and blesses us, twice, twofold, right? Or threefold or whatever it is in our health and our mental health and longevity. The people who are involved in religious communities are actually, they live longer and they have less chronic illnesses. So I mean, there's just a ton of studies that show how, and in fact, most of when I was doing my research for the master's thesis, almost every single research article that I was looking at said at the end of it, in the conclusion, said, we need to be looking at how our spiritual health, or how we need to be looking at how the patient's spiritual health can positively impact their physical treatment, and that this should be something that is started to be like every single, and I looked at hundreds, every single one of them suggested that this is something that we should actually be bringing into the clinic room. And that's really what started convicting me, when you have all kinds of, and they weren't Christian, right? They're just scientists who are doing these studies and seeing what the benefit is for our physical and emotional health. And then encouraging us to say, like, our our practicing needs to be shifting in this direction. Like, we need to be including this. And so that's really where my love for this was born, in seeing how the research is all pointing back to God. It's all pointing back to him.
Man, it's so good, and it's so countercultural, but it shouldn't be. And that's what I
Hmm.
hope that like having discussions like this is going to help someone else be a little bit more bold to step out because, I've had instances in my life where even somebody who is a proclaimed atheist, who was very, very worried about his wife's health, asked me to pray for her,
Hmm.
even though he didn't believe it for himself. He knew I did.
Mm.
And I think that I mean, that is a powerful message, but obviously there's a lot that goes into that. I've had this discussion before as well, where, you can pray for somebody all day long, but if they don't want healing for themselves,
Hmm.
like they have to want it for themselves.
Right.
They do. And so maybe somebody is listening to this, she's feeling like she's running on empty. Maybe even her lab work has come back as quote unquote normal. She doesn't feel like herself.
Yeah.
What's the first step that you'd encourage her to take?
Well, I always am an advocate of kind of self-evaluation. Like, is there something that I could be doing to improve how I'm feeling? And some cases, yes. In fact, usually there's always something I could be doing better, right? And so I try to look inward first. Now I say, like, bring that to God first of all, and just ask the Holy Spirit to reveal these things, right? And I think that's an important first step in, and especially too, like, as I'm talking about some of this, I can feel out there that there's somebody who's going to be like, well, that's great for other people, but that's not going to work for me. And and so I also would encourage anybody who's like putting up those walls to investigate what those walls are about. And there's always something there, right? If we feel like that's not possible for us, let's examine what that is. Where's that coming from? Why is it possible for other people but not for you? Or not for me, or whatever. I don't want to lay blame, but because we all have these feelings. Like, there's definitely times where someone said something and it's like, oh, that's great advice, but that's not going to work for me. And now I've learned, like, okay, why was that my first reaction? Like, why am I putting up that wall for what this person had to say? If it worked for them, it might not work in that same way, but how can I glean? How can I learn something from what she just shared? And I find that when I start doing some of that self-reflection and I pray for guidance on that, like, God always makes something clear to me. Like, there's another new little nugget of pridefulness, stubbornness, not wanting to be uncomfortable, not willing to step out in faith. Like, there's always something there that's putting that block in my way. And so I just really encourage people to just kind of do some of that and start to, yeah, it's uncomfortable. And he will be very faithful in pointing out when you ask him. But he's also very gentle, right? So he didn't lay all of my things at my feet at once. He would reveal small little chunks of, you really need to work on this area of pride, or you really need to work on, this, or you need to learn how to keep your mouth shut. And so every now and then, like, he'd just kind of drop another little nugget of, all right, this is now the time for you to work on this piece. And so I think that, the first place to start when you're really, you've had all the investigation done, everything's been ruled out, they tell you it's normal, maybe they've diagnosed you with depression or anxiety. Those tend to be the two go-tos if they can't find anything physically wrong for you and you feel like something's wrong. I would say that would be a good time to start turning to God and saying, you know what, I feel like I'm lost. What can I do? Where can I go? What do I need to learn about myself? And then the second practical step would be looking for a functional medicine provider. So whether that's a naturopathic doctor, a medical doctor, an MD who's been trained in functional medicine, some chiropractors kind of do a little bit of all of the above. And so that would be a practical step to say, because there's a difference between regular blood work and functional blood work. And the difference is that all your hormones can look great on paper and be within the normal range. But functionally speaking, if your cells aren't able to utilize the hormones properly, or if, things aren't converting in the ratios that they should be, you're still going to feel terrible. But without looking at the functional aspect, then it seems like everything's okay when really it's not. And so functional medicine really looks at, all right, you're within normal range, but how is your body utilizing these things? And there's different testing that you can do that will kind of unlock some of that. And there's also, depending on the person, the provider, like they can, based off of experience, they can look at your lab work, your symptoms, and say, hey, this is what's going on for you. I see it time and time again. We need to work on detoxification, liver support, and then hormone balancing. And so those two combinations, like some self-reflection with the help of the Lord, spending time with him and just not even making it about anything, just spending time, just talk to him, just whatever you want to say. If you can't think of anything to say for 10 minutes, you don't have anything to talk to him about, go to the Bible. I was actually just listening on my way back from Bible study today, before this episode. And it was talking about how you can pray God's words back to him. And so you can open pieces of the Bible or, verses in the Bible, and you can pray them back to him, whether it's worship or, lamentations or lamenting. Whatever it is, whatever's on your heart, you can find a verse that just resonates with you and you just pray it back to God, and he hears that, and the Holy Spirit will interpret that for us, right? And so that can be a great way to start if you're like, I've never really spent 10 minutes just sitting here praying. Like I'll pray while I'm driving or washing the dishes. But sometimes it's weird to just like sit down with him, right? And so I would say finding the functional medicine doctor that can help you kind of dig a little bit deeper. Number two, spend time with God, just in prayer, just sitting in prayer. Start with 5, 10 minutes, whatever feels doable that you can do every day, and make that into a routine. And then third is really be open to some honest self-reflection and trying to have a soft heart and hearing what the Lord might have for you in there, because that can be very difficult. We don't want to hear the bad things about us, right? Or there are things that we try to shove aside that we maybe know about, but we don't want to admit or acknowledge. When we can start working through that baggage, he allows us to do that in a very gentle way. And so you had mentioned that you have worked through, some childhood trauma and things. And there's a ton of research about how trauma affects our physical health as well, right? And so not everybody can address the trauma piece right up front, but God can give you little pieces at a time of things that you need to work through. And he's there to work through it with you if you ask him. And so he will never open a door that he's not going to help you close gently, right? And so I think those three pieces are going to be a great way to start really incorporating God into the health journey, as well as, helping to dig a little bit deeper from a physical standpoint and figure out, okay, that's all great, but I still need hormone support, right? It's not just pray better, pray more, spend more time with God. Like that's fantastic. But we also do know that there's some things physically that we can do as well. And so it's not a matter of one or the other. It's a matter of all three parts of our health, right? Our emotional, mental, emotional, our physical, and our spiritual together.
And so so good and so powerful. And I think back to the time in my life when I like literally the idea of sitting still and being quiet. Like I would go to yoga and that everybody else was very calm and could get into shavasana, and I could just think about the 4,000 things I needed to do. It was a very, very uncomfortable time for me to get quiet, to hear from what the Lord said. But also sometimes when I would get quiet, that's when like the stillness is also the time that the devil would try to work on me and
Mm-hmm.
put fear and doubt and shame and whatever else I was like the feelings that I needed to address, but he would just put that little bit of oomph in there. And so for me, really diving into what the Lord said about me, what he thought about me, what the word says was my way to combat the negativity that would try to take over in those, it literally is a spiritual battle. And I
Mhm.
think that the uncomfortableness of that process keeps us sort of stuck. And so while it is not necessarily a fun process to peel back those layers, to be very introspective, to ask yourself those hard questions or ask the Lord to reveal things. I will say that in the times where I quite literally was angry at the Lord and told him what's up, I was met with nothing but absolute love and patience. And you're right. There's times from my childhood now that I'm sort of processing through those things. There are little glimpses of things from my childhood that I had forgotten that now I see in a different light
Mm.
as a healed adult or someone who's working on that healing process. And how can I translate that into how my kids are experiencing life? Like, how
Mm.
can I be
Mhm.
a better mom? Because that's all I ever wanted to be growing up. Um,
Aw.
but I thank you so much for your wisdom and insight. And I know somebody is listening to this that is like, I need, I need her to listen to her podcast. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So tell us about that again and how someone could connect with you if they were like, I love what you're saying.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So my podcast is called The Christian Clinician. So it's on, Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music and all the normal places. And so I do a lot of, the physical health and how our relationship with God affects us. But I'm also very passionate about the apologetics piece as well. And so I throw in some apologetics in there. In fact, tomorrow's episode is going to be on the historical evidence or the evidence that we have for Jesus being a historical, actual person. So I'll throw some stuff in there like that as well, because our doubts can also negatively impact our relationship with the Lord, which negatively impacts our physical health as well. And so, and I've gone into that as well in the podcast. So, and then if you're just looking at wanting to connect with me, you can find me at godandhealth.com. And that will take you to the Christian Women Health Fellowship information page. And so if you want to join us as women, sisters in Christ who want to kind of look at the functional medicine piece in combination with how God fits into that, and addressing our doubts and answering questions that maybe doesn't feel safe to ask in other places. We have that's what the Christian Women Health Fellowship is about too. So godandhealth.com.
I love it. And I'll make sure that that's all in the show notes. Such an incredible resource and information, and I appreciate you. Before we jump off, is there anything else that you want to, maybe the Holy Spirit is urging you to say to some woman who's listening right now who's just like, I didn't know I needed this, but I,
Hmm. Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is, and something that I've been focusing in on is just that priorities piece, right? Really encouraging every woman out there to look at how are we prioritizing our day. And for me, when I did that, it was very convicting to find that God was the absolute last thing that I would fit into a day if I could. And most of the time that didn't happen. And when I realized that I was doing that, like I started to think, okay, well, why is all this other stuff so much more important than my relationship with the Lord? And I said, it's not. Like this is the enemy that's trying to get me away from Him. And so I think the biggest thing is just sit down, look at how your day is structured, and just pray about what your priorities are and why they are listed that way. And if you already prioritize God, fantastic. Like, awesome. I mean, I'm sure there are millions of women out there who've already learned this lesson the hard way. But for those that haven't, like, I think just looking at what are ways that I can be still with the Lord, and knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect right up front. Like, initially, when I started feeling convicted about this, I would maybe get one in 7 days. with him. And then it became 2 in 7 days. And then it became a summer where I didn't do any Bible reading, right? And so it's definitely a journey, and there's no shame in that because we're all learning. And I think the Lord is just excited when we're trying to put that effort and our feet forward, and then he will continue if we continue to pray that he would help us to remember. And I ask him that all the time. I'm like, God, I'm sorry, but please help me to remember you today. Like, I need you to stay top of mind. And now I find myself muttering to him all the time. Like, I'm in constant communication with him while I'm doing the dishes or driving or running errands or whatever. And it's just wonderful to have somebody that I can talk to all the time. But that started with that first step of just having to reassess my priorities and really choose to make God the first.
Oh, so good. I too have semi recently, it's like I retired, I'm gonna come home, and then I got, swept up in, oh, I've got to rebrand my podcast, and I've got all these calls, and
Mm,
I've found myself sort of getting back into old habits and
yeah.
trying to sort of move the ship in a different direction can be really hard. I found for me kind of like habit stacking. So something that I'm already doing on the regular, like brushing my teeth or getting dressed in the morning, I will use that as time to like turn on the word while I'm getting
Mm,
ready. And that's helped me be a little bit more consistent, but it's definitely one of those things that I have felt that the Lord's like, do you trust me?
yeah.
Like you can trust me with this. Look all the stuff that I've done and how it turned out way better than you could ever ask or imagine. Like I challenge you to trust me on this as well. And so I'm really leaning into that, and I appreciate him bringing you to me today to remind
Mhm.
me that yes, keep trusting and keep stepping out, and it's never going to look perfect, but he's still right there loving us every step of the way.
He is. He's so faithful. And I can only imagine how excited he is when, we start to like think about this and want it, right? We don't even have to want it necessarily. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've prayed, like, God, I want to want your will for me, but I don't want it because I want my will. And I realize that. So please just help me to want your will, right? And we can start as far back as that, and he will be faithful in answering it. And now my true desire is just to follow in his will, even when it's like, I don't understand why I'm doing this. I don't know what the point is, but I know that you do. So here we go. And you're right. Like, it's better than anything I could have ever planned for myself. So
It is pretty amazing, and definitely that peace that surpasses all understanding that you get when you do that,
Mm,
although uncomfortable, so worth it. And I can count many women that I've talked to that when they took that leap of faith, they stepped out,
hmm
they did what God was asking them to, even though uncomfortable and probably what they might consider the hardest
hmm
things or decisions or year or time of their life season, whatever it may be. They always say they would not trade it for the
hmm
world. So
Yep.
hopefully that will inspire someone who's listening that the Lord's asking her to take a step and she's reluctant. Maybe now she'll take the step. So thank you so much for being here, for sharing with us. So amazing. We'll have to do this again for sure.
Thanks so much, Susan. It's been great being here with you.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging out with me on this episode of Faith Over Pharma. If something stirred in you today, share this with a friend who's ready to stop outsourcing their health and start healing the way God designed. And if you're ready to stop chasing symptoms and start healing at the root, head over to faithoverpharma.org to grab tools, join the movement, or book a free call. Until next time, keep questioning the narrative, protecting your peace, and walking in the truth that your body was made to heal.